You're listening to the Marginally Geeky Show, the epically geeky book club.
Greetings and welcome to the Marginally Geeky Show, episode number 5. I'm your host for the evening, Eugene Stevens. Tonight I'm joined by Lainey, Jennifer, and Chris. How are y'all doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
All right. Anything really happened since the last time we talked? Been at least a month for a couple of us. Been a little bit longer for others.
What up, guys? I still exist and I still read.
So, well, tonight's episode, we're actually going to be discussing the Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher. It's probably no surprise as to why we picked this book when we picked it. Unfortunately, we lost Miss Fisher not too long ago, and we thought this would be the best way to honor her memory would be by reading the last book that she put out. So, with that being said, any thoughts beforehand? I'll just kind of put this out there. I knew this was about her time while she was filming the original Star Wars movies. So I kind of had some thoughts as to what would be in the book, but what we got in the book was not what I was expecting. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Really.
So, because I thought we'd be getting some stories about things that were happening on set and this, that, and the other, and she explains why those things aren't in the book. So with that, let's just go ahead and get started. So she starts off the book, and she's kind of setting the scene. She talks about all the stuff that's happened in that's happening in 1976, the celebrities who have died, the big events that are going on, just kind of getting you in that, frame of mind. And then she starts talking about how she's really excited for the new Star Wars movies coming out in 2013. So this is previous to, them start, firing things up and getting started. At this point, she knew the movies were coming out. She knew she was going to be part of them. But, to kind of give you an idea as to when this book was written. So, and then she immediately kind of dives back into her time right before Star Wars started. Acting career-wise, she really didn't do anything before Star Wars. The only thing that she did a few little things here and there, but for the most part, her biggest thing was she had like one or two scenes in Shampoo with Warren Beatty.
She had like a minor role in Shampoo with Warren Beatty.
Yeah, and so that was kind of her only real acting before Star Wars.
She was a showgirl too in her mom.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because she does talk about that.
Chorus girl.
Yeah, she talks about her mom. She talks about her grandmother and kind of the interesting relationship there, and how she was basically kind of pulled out of school. She didn't graduate high school, and was, like Lainey said, a showgirl for her mom while she was doing her act. So,
it's got to be crazy enough to grow up being Debbie Reynolds' daughter, just in general.
Yeah.
But to also just not be in like a typical environment for a 14, 15, 16-year-old. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's what and then she starts talking about that. The fact that she wasn't in a traditional like school setting, she felt like a lot of the things that she would have, figured out or done or had the social interaction with other people her age and at that time, she missed out on. So she kind of had this weird coming of age when it came to certain things. One of the other things she talks about, and of course this is echoed later on, is the fact that I mean, granted, I'm on the show tonight talking with three women, but the whole thing, her talking about how they're like, okay, well, is she gonna wear a bra or not in this movie? And then literally like they just march her out there in front of Warren Beatty, and he's like, is she wearing one? Yes. All right, let's try it without it. And then march her back, bring her back. He's like, And I'm just like, okay, that's got to be wonderful for your,
Yeah, and I'd like to point something out, too, about that scene is, like, very much notice how none of it was actually addressed to her.
Yes, that was the other thing, was he was asking the costume woman if it wasn't like, are you wearing one? It was literally, is she wearing one?
Yeah.
Like she's just a thing. So but yeah, so of course, I mean, we're talking 1976, so
Yeah, that still happens now.
Yeah, I'm sure it still happens now. Hopefully not anywhere near as much. Okay, so before we get to this next part that she's addressing, talking about you, like I said, her odd coming of age, as it were. I listen to all the books that we do on this show. I listen to all my books through audiobook, and I listen to them through the Audible app at double speed. I listen to all my podcasts through double speed. I listen to all of my books at double speed, which is part of the reason why.
No, it's terrifying when you get in the car with him and it just like syncs up.
No, it's not. It's not as they've gotten really good at not getting it to be like as high pitched. So it's definitely, you can tell it's definitely a little higher pitched than normal, but it's not like you said, it's not like Alvin and the Chipmunks or anything.
Oh my god.
But that being said, so I listened to everything at double speed. I started listening to this book, and I got to this next point, and I literally just was like, okay, I've got to restart the book, and I have to go back down to normal speed because she's talking way too fast. So I started the book up again, started it up at single speed, got to about the same point, and realized, no, she's not talking too fast. I'll probably go back to 1.5 speed on this to finish the rest of the book. The problem is not she's talking too fast. The problem is my brain is not able to absorb the information that she is telling us because it is so outlandish. And of course, I'm referring to the point that she, like I said, she had an odd kind of coming of age type of thing. And her crushes seem to always be on gay men. She refers to, making out with a couple of different men that she's 99% sure we're gay or we're just out there gay. Including one that her mother, was still having a hard time with, her husband leaving and everything else and dealing with her mom and everything. And
that
and like I said, I had listened to this multiple times about saying, offering to watch her have sex with a gay man and give her pointers at the age of 15.
I'm so curious about like how that was like phrased to her too, because I'm picturing Debbie Reynolds saying it like in a very Debbie Reynolds way of like being kind of like funny, and it's still not funny, but it's like, I don't know, in my head when I first read it, like I was like, okay, I heard it in like a Debbie Reynolds like, well, if you want, I could always just give you some pointers, like, you know what I mean? Like trying to be kind of funny, not really totally knowing like what her total maternal role is in Carrie's life.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I like I said, that's the point that I was like, okay, I've got to go back and re-listen to it. I even like, I was talking to Cy about it, and I said, I think this is what she said in this book. And he's like, dude, there's no way that's what she said. He's like, definitely go back, re-listen to it, make sure you got it right, because you don't want to spread anything or get it wrong or whatever on the show. Went back, re-listened to it. I texted him, dude, that's what she said. And he's like, wow, that's literally all he said. Which, if you know Cyrus, it's kind of hard to shut him up. So,
wow,
anybody could do it.
That did it.
Yeah, that did it. That really floored me.
Yeah.
And she talks about how her grandmother is extremely hard on her mom. She brings up a particular time whenever she was trying to get tickets for something and wasn't able to get tickets, and she's just like, oh well, your name used to mean something at one time in this town, and it was just like, wow. Yeah, and then she talks about her father was a crooner and a drug addict, and left her mom. So that was just like, I'm just like, wow, you turned out pretty good for the crap that you grew up in.
Too, like not just left her mom in one of the most public.
That's true too.
Divorces at that time, especially, like that was a huge deal. Like it was massive. That lived on in the tabloids for years afterwards.
Well, because it was the death of her husband, Richard Burton, and Eddie Fisher was Richard Burton's best. They just sort of with each other. I saw a documentary. It's just sort of because they weren't together for very long before they got divorced.
Yeah.
No, not at all. It's
But yeah, but it was like Jennifer Aniston, Brad, Jolie level stuff. Like whose team are you on?
whose team are you on?
Yeah.
Are you team Jennifer? Or are you team Angie?
I think everybody was pretty much team Debbie though, because they were all like, "She has a child." Like,
Oh
it was
yeah,
like a whole
I
thing.
would. Yeah, because she
Two
says that. She
children,
said
right?
pretty much her dad's name was Mud in Hollywood.
Oh
the rest
yeah,
of the
he
time,
never
so.
recovered from that.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, Eddie Fisher never came back from that. Ah.
So, and then she talks about the fact that, you know, it's at this point she went to London School for Acting and was there for like a semester and came home over the Christmas break and then found out that they were casting for 2 different movies. And I think it's interesting. She paints the picture of the building. It's just like this run-of-the-mill building. There's nothing special about it, but like so much important stuff for, you know, film history happened there. And, you know, she talks about that. But when she went in and read, she actually was reading for 2 different parts for 2 different movies. And she read before she was reading for George Lucas and Brian De Palma. And she talks about the fact that they're both, you know, slightly different sized men. They both have beards. They're both directors, and, you know, but Brian's very open, very enthusiastic, ask questions and stuff. And George Lucas was very much just kind of sit back and let, you know, take things in. And she was reading for the part of Carrie in the movie Carrie, which she thought that would be funny if Carrie had played Carrie in Carrie.
Carrie.
Yeah, which, so anyway, she, you know, pretty much he asked a question about, Brian De Palma asked a question about like her acting, her previous acting career, and of course she just talks about, you know, what little, you know, time she had on Shampoo or whatever, and wanted her to elaborate. She wasn't quite sure, and then so on and so forth. And she kind of thought she'd blown it. She walks out and then go, okay, well now we need you to come over here and actually, you know, record some lines or whatever. And she, you know, she starts reading the script for Star Wars and is just blown away by it. And of course, the first script, which, you know, everyone I'm sure would love to see, you know, is tons different than you know, what ended up, because the name of the chapter is literally Hanging Upside Down with Yellow Eyes.
Yeah.
Because of this scene that she just fell in love with, this idea of at one point in the movie, she's supposed to be captured by Darth Vader, and she's hanging upside down with yellow eyes, and she's rescued by Han Solo and Chewbacca, this large furry creature. She's not sure what that is, and being carried through watery caves. Of course, none of that happens in the movie, but
yeah, I read that. I was like, how did I miss all that? Like,
I know,
I've
right?
seen that a lot of times. I've seen that movie more times than I can count. Am I just bad at this? Like, yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. And then she talks about the main reason why part of that was shot down is because Peter Mayhew had already been cast for Chewbacca, but just because of his size and everything else, and with the costume, there was no way he would have been able to carry her in the movie. So like it was, you know, that was shot, and of course, you know, obviously a lot of other things were changed in the movie due to the budget and everything, but and then she got to read with Harrison Ford. And when she found out, whenever they called her and told her that she got the part, she like runs out of the house excited. Like she literally says she runs out to the street and she's just screaming at the top of her lungs. She's so excited that she got the part. So
this is crazy because she didn't even want to act. You know, she was like nonchalant about it.
That's right. Yes. And she does say that multiple times that she wasn't even sure she ever wanted to be an actress.
Yeah.
So I didn't write that down. And then she's told that she has to lose 10 pounds. So she went to a quote unquote fat farm in Texas, which I thought was interesting, if nothing else, for the fact that she met Ann Landers and Lady Bird Johnson while she was there.
Yep.
Yeah, that was cool.
And I'm just like, almost, I need to go back and re-listen to this again. Did she say Ann Landers and Lady Bird Johnson?
The comedian has a question. Who's Lady Bird Johnson?
Lady Bird Johnson is one of the most famous first ladies.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just
she was LBJ's wife. She is responsible for the wildflowers that grow in Texas in the spring along the highways.
Okay.
Yep. So she's still very well. That's part of the reason is she's very well known here in Texas. So
yeah, she's like a big deal in Texas, especially.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to make sure I was.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
How dare you be Canadian? Come on now.
I'm sorry.
But so she talks about she only stayed there for a little bit of time. She did not lose the 10 pounds that they asked her to, and she was afraid at a whopping 110 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's funny, especially looking back at especially how I guess we see ourselves as compared to how other people see her, or see you. She keeps saying that she thought she was fat and had a really round face. And going back and looking at her pictures, I guess I would describe her face as being round, but not like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not. She's not like a beach ball or anything.
Yeah.
No, but
she
she's very young,
Totally.
cheeky.
Gorgeous, yeah.
She's 19.
Yeah, exactly. So then she goes on and she starts talking about, the hairdos or whatever. And, she's given all these options, and it's like days on days on days of trying these different hairdos. And when they put, as she put it, the buns, when they put the buns on her head, it took hours to do. And she like walked out and literally saw Lucas, and I can't remember who the other person was. And they're like, well, what do you think of those? And she's like, oh, I love it. They're great. And they're like, okay, well, that's what we'll go with. And she's just like, damn it. Why did I say that? So
I love that part of the book. She talks about the hair and how ridiculous and time consuming it was. Because, I mean, when you think about the things she has to do, how realistic is it that hair actually stays in place and looks that good the whole time?
Oh, yeah.
Hear it all.
Stupid.
And she even goes on that short diatribe of how, her mother in the prequels got to wear all these different things. And she's like, that sucks. I had one hairdo and she's going to be remembered forever, all these other things. So,
Yeah.
and then she goes on, she does start talking about, she jumps ahead, but she starts talking about her favorite scene in filming any of the Star Wars is the scene where she gets to kill Jabba.
Mm-hmm.
I would say probably her most iconic scene. I mean, she's got several iconic scenes throughout the entire series, but that's probably one of her most, if not her most iconic scene. The whole metal bikini thing, and she talks about that. The fact that she thinks, there was quite a bit of blowback here the last couple of years before she passed about the whole. They should stop making the Princess Leia stuff with the metal bikini because it's degrading or whatever. And she's just like, fuck you. I was a princess. I was forced to wear this, and I'm the one that killed the mobster.
Mm-hmm.
So she was very proud of that scene, and she should be.
Well,
so.
And she's talked about like not liking the metal bikini, but the whole thing about how the fact that she made sure that she was the real one to kill Jabba, like, was a whole deal. She's like, he made me wear this shit, and I killed him.
That's right.
So I appreciate that about her.
I did too. I thought that was awesome. So she starts her first scene that she actually started, when she first started filming the movie was with Peter Cushing, who played Tarkin. She thought the dialogue was very odd. And she said it was the only time that George Lucas ever gave her any direction. Now, if you know anything about George Lucas, everyone says the exact same thing. He pretty much only tells his actors like, two things: faster or more energetic or something like that. And that's like the only two things he ever says. And she said this was the only time he ever actually gave her any real direction. And he took her aside and was like, look, you're a princess. You've been tortured. You literally are watching your planet with everyone you know and love being destroyed before your eyes. And she's like, that's when it kind of sunk in. So I thought that was kind of interesting because, like I said, everything you ever hear any other actor talk about George Lucas is, like I said, it's one of two things: faster or more energetic. So, and then she gets to what I consider to be the main part of the book, and that is she starts basically just flat out saying, "Oh, by the way, I had an affair with Harrison Ford while he was still married."
Okay, I had to read that part twice. The part in the taxi, I had to read that twice. I'm like, wait. When did they start kissing? Just a second. I had to read it over again because she just sort of blurted it out.
Mm-hmm. At this point, she goes back and references her father leaving and how it hurt her. She said when she first saw Ford, she thought he was way out of her league, and then she could tell from the beginning he was going to be a star. She also said that she had pretty much made up in her mind that she was going to, have a rendezvous with someone on, in the movie or whatever, because she was like, this is my chance to, lose my virginity and, have an adventure because we're out filming on set and, all this other cool stuff. And she was just like, she pretty much just kind of marked him off the list immediately because, like she said, he was way out of her league.
And married.
Yeah, and married. Exactly. And married. That's one of the other key things there. So at George Lucas's 32nd birthday, oh God, it's 32nd birthday, and he filmed Star Wars. Anyway,
Makes you feel a little inadequate, doesn't it?
yeah, I'm turning 40. I'm like, what have I done?
Nah, you shouldn't. After
I got married and made 2 awesome
Harrison
boys, and
Ford.
I've got a cool website with some cool podcasts and stuff. But he made Star Wars. Anyway, so she doesn't like drinking at all, but she kind of gets peer pressured by the crew to finally have some drinks or whatever. And she looked at it as they were just kind of like, being goofy, being kind of rowdy or whatever. She never felt like she was in any kind of danger or anything. But Harrison Ford steps in and was just like, so, what are y'all doing with the young lady? Because, that's not happening. So he jumps in a car with her and literally has a tussle with some of the guys on set and jumps in the car and drives off with her. Now, part of me in the back of my head almost thinks, I wonder if that was planned on Ford's part.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I'm going to leave it benefit of doubt to say maybe he's just that, he's just that type of guy. But
then he turns around and takes advantage of a drunk.
Yes.
So.
And has the audacity to be really boring and dull.
Yeah. So,
Curious and brooding.
Oh
yeah,
my God.
They make out in the car and they realize that they're being followed by Mark Hamill and Peter Cullen. And so she talks about the fact that finding American food is really hard in England. And there's a couple of specific places they know of. So they go to this one particular place that they know has, American food. So they go there and eat dinner or whatever. Ford and her get back in the cab, head back to her place and go upstairs. And she, and I will say, she's very obviously she's been very open about all this other stuff that there's no way in hell I would have thought anyone would have mentioned. But she does, luckily leave out those parts. So she's basically like, look, we went upstairs and you can imagine what happened then. So.
Well, I just feel like she's like, hey, because I just don't think that that's the most important part of the story anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think she knew that. And just, I don't need to sit here and give every single detail of what happened when we went upstairs. But the important part is that dinner was super weird. And I sat there the entire time thinking about every single thing I was going to say. And if I was being too quiet, or if I said something, what if it was dumb and nobody liked it? And I enjoyed it because it was very much I've had those moments, especially at 19, where I'm just like, oh my God, he's not even paying attention to me. Why am I even here? He totally doesn't even like me. But if he doesn't like me, why did he bring me out? But what's the point about I've had that. You can't even listen to the conversation because you're so in your own head.
I think everyone goes through that at some point, especially like you said, 19, around that age, especially if you're around, people who are older, people you at least perceive to be adults, and you're just like, what am I doing here? I'm a total imposter, and anything I say, they're going to look at me and think I'm a kid or that I'm an idiot or whatever. So, yeah. Basically, she says, look, they had several weekends together afterward. And it was pretty much just them getting together. They spent the weekend together and then tried really hard to seem like they, nothing was happening during the week. But there wasn't anything there. It was basically just them being together. There was no long drawn out conversations. There was no really getting to know him or him getting to know her. It was a fling. It was just, he
was a side piece basically for that whole shoot.
Yeah, pretty much. So, She said the one time that she kind of broke through, and I thought this was hilarious. I loved this scene. This was one of my whole favorite scenes in the book, is when she does the impression of him and actually gets him to laugh.
I love the way that she described that.
Mhm.
That was so dead on too. I would have loved to have seen her do that impression later on in life. I would have
Oh yes, that would
appreciated
be
it.
hilarious.
Oh my god.
And then she talks about how pretty much the most of it is, she's like, literally the reason why she wrote the book is because she was going through some old stuff and found these diaries, which is where the title comes from, that she kept during the actual filming. And she says that because of her heavy pot use, she honestly does not remember what happened or how she felt the rest of the time. And as a result, she didn't use any drugs afterwards because she was like, wow, I literally cannot remember what was happening. And that's kind of scary and fucked up. So, and then it's at this point that we're actually introduced to the diaries. Any thoughts on the diaries?
I loved them. It made me feel like a normal teenager because I used to write stuff like that. Like just the angst, just the emotion, the drama.
Oh my god,
Yes.
Chris, I'm so glad you said that because I felt like a dummy for enjoying it so much.
No, I did. I told Ray, I was like, Ray, this is me. I have diaries downstairs that from when Ray and I started dating, and just how I talked about him, and I was just like, oh my god.
No.
Oh yeah, and the bad poetry, oh
yeah, I've got
I
those.
thought it was all right, actually.
I've got those.
Yeah, but it's so angsty though. Like it's just so you roll your eyes. You're like, really? It was that bad, buddy? Okay.
Well, because like when you're writing it, when you're like 19, 20, you're just like, I am so fucking deep. God, I'm so smart. Like,
and I know everything. And you're like, oh no, you
and
don't.
I'm feeling these huge, massive feelings that no one my age has ever felt before.
Yeah. I'm the first one to ever go through this. I am a pioneer.
Yep.
And then you look back and you're like, good Lord. She must have just laughed at herself. Which is probably why she published them, because they were so ridiculous.
Just ridiculous.
Yeah, a lot of them are written as poems. She knows things aren't right, but she can't stop herself. Knows she couldn't be attracted to an unavailable man. Just looking through my notes here. He's cold, silent, strong, and she wishes, she could be too. That's one of the things that she talked about. She was like, it's just easy for him to basically just, be him. And she doesn't, she wishes she could be that way, but she knows she can't. And yeah, honestly, I thought the diaries were pretty short compared to the rest of the book. Like I was like, oh, I kind of thought there was going to be more of those. So
yeah, I thought that they were going to be like sprinkled throughout.
Me too. Yeah.
And so it was a little like I got a little caught off guard with them all being kind of in one big chunk in the middle. So, because I kept thinking I was missing something, I thought that I think I would have preferred it if they had kind of been sprinkled through a little bit. But,
I ended up like reading halfway through and then skipping over to the rest of the book because I was like, okay, I need more. Like, I need to know what happens next. This is kind of the same old thing. I mean, it was good, but I went back and forth.
Well, it's so interesting to me how much she wrote in the span of like the time that they were together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again, completely identify with. Like, I get it. I 100% get it.
Mm-hmm. She's been writing like every day or
Yeah. My thought is she was probably doing that while he was sitting there, being him, being quiet and not saying anything. That's probably what she was doing, was writing.
Yeah. Oh, Carrie.
Yeah.
At that point, we get to, she starts talking about, after the movies have come out and how like no one knows how to handle the fame because it literally is, it is a groundbreaking movie. No one has ever made, up to this point, the term blockbuster was created because no one had ever seen a movie do something like this. So she talks about not really knowing how to handle the fame. And in the beginning, her and Mark and, real quick, before I gloss over that, she talks about the fact how she kind of wishes it had been someone else. In fact, she even specifically mentions that she wished it had been Mark Hamill because she thought maybe something could have kind of happened there.
I like the way she said it, though. She's like, it would have meant more with Mark.
Yes.
And
how weird would that have been for us, you guys?
Super weird.
No, you're right. In retrospect. Yeah. Now here's the other thing, though. What if, because I thought about this too, what if her and Mark had gotten together and had come out as a couple before we got Return of the Jedi?
Yeah, I don't think it would have done.
I don't think they would have gone with the brother-sister angle.
No,
I really think
so.
that would have. And so we would have had a much different track later on. So, so yeah, I mean that not that it was a choice necessarily, but had that choice happened, it definitely could have changed, a lot of history, at least, in the Star Wars universe. So, but she talks about how her and Mark and Harrison like literally just sat down and answered all of their fan mail at first because, they didn't know any better. They're like, yeah, someone wrote me, I'm going to write them back. And, she talks about these different stories of, signing autographs and, till like your hands just like cramped up and everything else. And then she starts talking about doing these TV shows and how, Ford would start quoting philosophy on talk shows, and she almost did it as well. And like to the point that she literally like had a philosophy teacher come, talk to her and educate her about some of this stuff. And then she's like, I probably shouldn't do that because if it looks like all of the actors are just quoting philosophy, they're probably all a bunch of douchebags.
Right.
Which I thought was funny. And then she talks about the fact that, all of these promotions had been set up ahead of time before the movie because, that's pretty much how they used to do it. And so even, after the movie blew up, they were still going on a, state by state, tour to promote the movie. It's like, this is the last movie in the world that we had to promote, and yet we were still going out promoting it. And they'd go to amusement parks during their downtime, which I think that's funny that that core group could actually have been seen at an amusement park or whatever. She has a quick story about seeing Harrison Ford like stuck upside down or whatever in one of these tilt-a-whirl things or something. So yeah. And then she starts talking about and she introduces probably my absolute favorite thing of this entire book is what she refers to as signing autographs, and that is the celebrity lap dance.
Oh my God, I love her so much, you guys. Like
that's so right, like the way she's.
It really does, and I love how when she like mentioned, she's like, yeah. Sometimes I would say it to someone who didn't know what I was talking about. Like,
exactly.
I have a lap dance in Reno that weekend, but I think it'll be fine. I'm like, yes. God, she's just the queen. I love her.
Yes.
Love her, yeah.
Oh yeah. When I
Perfect.
When I read that, I was like, that is great. And unfortunately, that's going to stick in my brain the next time I go to a con.
Yeah.
And especially if like Ernie Hudson is there, because I'd like him to sign some of my Ghostbusters stuff and be like, I'm about to go get a lap dance from Ernie Hudson.
Yep.
Not gonna put it that way, at least not on Twitter.
She kind of like made like she kind of justified like all of my worst fears too, because like I've always had like a weird thing about like the thought of going to cons or something and like having somebody. It just freaks me out to like pay money to go have somebody sign a piece of paper for me. Like I get it. But it's like you're paying to have that interaction, and something about that just totally freaks me out. And she basically just like confirmed everything that I had ever thought. I'm like, this has to be weird for that person too, right?
Well, it also, I mean, it depends on the person. And she even mentions it. She's like, depending on the person, she's like, occasionally they would go to these conventions and they, some new, hot, to-do actress or whatever who clearly did not want to be there.
Yeah.
Signing stuff or whatever. But like, I don't know if you heard this or not. I think we mentioned it on the show or the other show sometime or another. Like Norman Reedus has flat out come out and said he makes more money on the con circuit than he does filming The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah, no, there's a crazy amount of money in it, and like there's
I think a lot of them are realizing that, and they're like, you know what? This is actually my primary job now. Like The Walking Dead is almost a promotion for my actual job. So I think, and it also depends on the personality, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are just like, oh God, I got another con to go to, and I'm
Yeah.
and
Like,
then you
I
have those
don't
other
know.
people that genuinely like want to meet them. Like, for example, Jennifer and I were at the Brazos Valley Comic Con, and I cannot remember the guy's name, but he played Mr. Belding in Saved by the Bell.
Oh, Dennis Richards.
He was so nice, and anyone you ever
Look at
talk
you.
to
Come through
will
with
say
that
the
name,
same
Chris.
thing.
Sorry.
I love that.
He like, I was walking around and I literally heard him turn to, his handler, the person they had assigned to him. And he was like, "Are you tired? Go ahead and sit down. I've got this. I'm okay. Get yourself a bottle of water." He said, "I'm fine. I'll let you know if I need something, but I'm cool." And he's like walking around, just meeting people, talking to them, and just was like, everyone's like, everyone I've ever heard on a podcast or anything that they've talked to him, they're like, he's just like the most chill, laid back, just awesome, really enjoys being there type of guy. So
It's like John Barrowman. When we went and met him last year, he was amazing, and he did that with everybody. It must have been exhausting for him, but he had so much fun. Like, you could tell he was having so much fun playing this up and being a character for everybody and feeding off all of their energy, because he was hilarious. It was awesome. He put his arm around me. We had a moment. It was fantastic.
nice.
I've always thought to myself, if I could get like a small role in Star Wars, the most obscure character, I would be set for life, because I just toured the con circuit and get $20 an autograph for being like the alien or the person inside of that alien costume.
Yes.
Right.
It's literally anybody that's ever been in Star Wars is at a con.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
Crazy.
So, let's see here. Started signing autographs, Comic Cons, and doing events basically to pay her bills. And she talked about the fact that she basically was doing this to pay her bills. She was, as she put it, she was broke. She said she was like, what, rich broke, which means she was okay, but like and she talks about the fact that she's kind of addicted to shopping, which could definitely be a thing, especially if you're rolling in tons of cash when you're earlier in your life. But she also talks about the fact that she made a ton of money over the years from different things, mostly connected to Star Wars, but her business manager like basically robbed her.
Yep.
Which
Well,
that's unfortunately happened to more than one person.
She didn't get merchandising.
Yeah, she didn't have merchandising rights
she
to any of the
signed away.
Leia stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which
course,
makes
then again,
sense when you think about it, because of course she did. She's like, oh, whatever. She's 19. She's
Yeah.
going in there. It doesn't really sound like anybody was really there with her. So she was
Well, I mean,
like, oh,
that's
yeah,
just
I'll sign
how-
a contract.
That's how it was done back then. Like literally, Lucas went in and was like, one of his demands when he was working with Fox, because I've heard this from like from another book that I've read. He went in there and he was like very adamant. He's like, I want all of the stuff from all the toy sales and everything. And they're just like, yeah, sure, okay, you can have that. Because at that time they didn't make toys for movies really, and if they did, they didn't amount to anything. So most of the most of the movie chain, the production companies or whatever were just like, yeah, that's the garbage stuff that they kind of like shovel over just to kind of, say, oh, hey, you're going to be making more money. And Fox did not realize what a barrel, Lucas had them over until, everything blew up or everything. So yeah, I can imagine that it was definitely like, and then she said, she's 19, hey, I got a role in the movie. This is awesome. What are points?
Yeah.
So, but she does go on and she talks about the fact that she does greatly appreciate her fans, and that hit home. That felt good.
Yeah.
I love listening to her describe like the little kids that come and see her whose parents have dressed them up.
Mm-hmm.
Because that reminded me so much of the kids whose like parents dress them in these like really elaborate costumes to come to the Disney parks. Come and meet like princesses and stuff, and they're itchy and they're hot and like they don't want to be there right now because they're tired. And I loved it. And when she describes like how upset they get, and she's like, I don't want this Leia. I want the old Leia. Like I want the real Leia, and they just can't. I love it.
Yeah.
She's
Can't
so
deal.
funny.
Yeah.
Didn't
Oh
she
my
say she
God.
had to like tell a kid she'd get plastic surgery to calm him
Yeah.
down?
Yeah.
I will fix it. I promise. And he's like, okay, good. Because, like,
Oh, she just laughs about it.
I know. Well, because they're kids. Like, that's another thing I appreciate her is that she's like, I'm not going to sit here and be like a dick about it. It's like, it's a 5-year-old. Like,
Hmm.
I love that. That makes me so, I love it.
Yep. On the fact that, she wouldn't be, and she mentions it several times, it's definitely a running theme in the book that she is Leia and Leia is her. They are inseparable.
One and the same.
So yeah, and she greatly appreciates and unfortunately, I think a lot of stars are starting to kind of realize this and kind of come around to it because you hear about these stars that are like, oh, I got typecast and I will forever be this person or whatever, and I don't know if it's a phase or whatever, and then they kind of, it seems like almost in later age they come to realize that hey, I wouldn't have the stuff that I have and been able to do if it wasn't for that role.
Mhm.
But it seems like she never went through that. Like she realized this is who I am, and she's me, and I'm her, and that's all there is to it. So
And I think the fact that she wasn't really sure she wanted to be an actress in the first place helped that a lot. Because it's like, if you don't have these big, massive dreams of like, I'm going to win an Oscar and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, then when you're cast in a role like that, that is super iconic and does stick with you forever, you're just kind of appreciative of all the wonderful opportunities it's afforded you instead of being really resentful of the fact that, well, now I'm Princess Leia forever. You get to be Princess Leia forever.
that's
And she
right.
does say that. Like, she
Yeah.
knows how special that is. She knows that she's one in a few people that if you say Princess Leia, you immediately see her face. Like, you cannot not see her face, and you cannot think of her. And she's Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia. She understands how rare and how wonderful that is. So I thought that was really great that she's like, yeah, I'm Princess Leia, but Princess Leia is also me, and you can't think of one without the other, and that'll always be that way. She thinks that's pretty cool. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, Harrison Ford has the duality. I mean, granted, he's been in several different roles, had several other large roles, but I'm sorry, Harrison Ford is either Han Solo or Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Sorry. You made a pretty awesome president and you've done some other awesome stuff, but sorry,
Oh yeah.
you are a smuggler or an archaeologist. That is your role.
Yeah.
And then of course, like, Mark Hamill has, he's done smaller roles here and there, but like his voice acting is just phenomenal. Like he has done so much voice acting, but he is always and will always be Luke Skywalker. That's just, and he's okay with that. Of course, people who know about his other work, the stuff that he's been doing, doing voice work, they know him as either Luke Skywalker or the Joker. And he's still one of my favorite Jokers ever, but yeah. So, what an extremely long book. Just kind of wrap up real quick with some overall thoughts. I'm just going to put this out there. This book was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be, and like I said, she explains this partially because of she links it to her pot usage, that she didn't remember a lot of the stuff that happened during the filming of these movies. And that's kind of what I was hoping for was, like I said, some goofy scene where they all got together and, this happened or, accidents on the set or something. That's kind of what I was expecting. So having the majority of the book focus on her affair with Harrison Ford was not what I was expecting at all. I enjoyed the book. I did still enjoy the book, but it really wasn't what I was expecting. So
it made me feel a little bit better to know that if Carrie Fisher could also like fall into that little like pit, I don't know. I was like, okay. I was like, if one of the most incredible women that I've ever admired went through something like that, like maybe I am doing life pretty okay. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I also definitely had like an identity crisis when I was reading this book, and I was like seeing so many things that reminded me of myself. And I texted a friend of mine. I was like, should I be concerned about this? Like, granted, Carrie Fisher, pretty cool lady, but like at the same time, like, no, I think you're okay. I was like, okay, just checking.
Yeah, I was struck by her. she's very self-conscious and, you know, just not very confident in a lot of ways. And that's just not how I've pictured her my whole life. So yeah, like you said, I could relate to a lot of it. And it was kind of nice in a way to know that, you know, we all go through these things that, you know, even Carrie Fisher has days like that. And I loved her writing style. Like,
Absolutely.
I want to go and read every book she's written now. I haven't read any of them, unfortunately, but
I started Wishful Drinking.
yeah, I'm
And I
about to
love
go just through all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, if y'all go through a couple of them and y'all think they would be awesome for the book club, definitely put them on the recommendations list. So.
Plus, the nice thing about when you read, like I do personally prefer to like read my books, but I downloaded this one specifically on Audible because I wanted it to be like she was reading me a bedtime story, which has been very comforting. So I just appreciate this.
Most of the time, I find the author reading it turns out to be pretty good, especially if it's like a biography. That turns out to be usually really good. Stephen King is the one example that I didn't care for when he read the book, but
Amy Poehler did a bang up job.
Oh my gosh, I love the comedians.
They always do a great job.
Oh yeah, well we may have to throw a couple of those on there for our next couple of books. We'll have to see. So, Chris, did you have any other thoughts on the book?
Oh, as I was reading it, the whole thing was bittersweet for me, right? Because the way she talks about plans for her future or things that may happen one day.
Oh
my God, Carrie, honey, you're dead. You can't. It was just hard. It was really fun to read, but it was also really sad too because she's gone now, and the book came out right before she passed away, and it was just almost like prophetic. Like she knew almost that this was going to be the last chance to get it all in, and she better do it now. It made me feel a whole lot better about myself, though. That's for sure. Just being neurotic and just insecure and being a bit of a crazy teenager and, you know, being dramatic and all that stuff. And it was just like, no, okay, I was kind of normal. That's all right. Wasn't as crazy as I thought I was. But it was very sweet to read. And I love the way she talked about her daughter, how she just put her in there a little bit, and her mom.
Yeah.
And now like you guys, I'm going to read the rest of her books. I loved her reading style. She's so sassy.
She's just amazing. Like I said, it's nice to see this like really incredible, strong woman who like stood up for so many things that I believe in be fragile sometimes. And I don't know, it was a really good read. It was, like you said, Chris, it was definitely really bittersweet though. Yeah. Plus, like, what a bummer to find out that Harrison Ford is not nearly as interesting as the characters that he plays.
I'm
like,
not surprised though, because
I was genuinely shocked. Really? I don't know.
It makes sense though, because you're having an extramarital affair. You can't get too involved. You're not doing.
Oh no! Like when I heard that they had slept together, the relationship she described to me was exactly what I pictured. Mm-hmm. But just the way that she describes Harrison Ford, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
No, you and I would never be friends. Like
I had the same thought. The only thing that I thought might have contributed to that, and who knows, he may still be, that boring as a rock, is and she says the fact that, well, and real quick, I'm fumbling over stuff because I've got so much stuff I want to say. One of the things that you said reminded me, Chris, and she brought up the fact that the reason why she put out this book and put this stuff out there is because she knew it was going to come out and she wanted to make sure she had it told the way she wanted to tell it.
Yes, and it happened so long ago that nobody cares anymore. And the relationship that he was in wound up in divorce. So
shortly after, which makes me think maybe one of the reasons why he was so somber is because he was just like stewing. In over his current, marriage basically falling apart.
Yes.
And maybe that's why he was so emotionally unavailable. I don't know.
I just figured that maybe Harrison Ford was like a lot of really attractive men in their late 20s, early 30s who have been attractive their whole life and just isn't
not
that
develop
interesting?
A personality.
Yes. When you are hot, you don't usually have to develop a personality.
Yeah,
right?
weird looking people have to really get in there and develop.
The rest of it, we got to work for it.
Yeah.
All right, ladies, that was a good discussion. I really enjoyed the book. Before we talk about our next book, though, and some of you have already mentioned you've already started reading some other stuff. Is there anything else you've been reading? Real quick, I finished up all the Ghostbuster comics that I currently have. I got them from a humble bundle that was online. Oh, geez, I guess it was back like October, November. I've been busy with other stuff. Finally got around to finish reading them. And the fact that whereas like a lot of other geeky things, like the comic books are kind of their own thing, like they're not really canon, they're not really considered part of the main story. The comics for Ghostbusters really are kind of considered canon because everything that's happened in the movies, the cartoon was something different, but they actually addressed that in the small series where they kind of do a crossover thing. But like it's all considered like pretty much canon. So like when people will reference the fact that well, like for example, when the new Ghostbusters movie came out, that original trailer talked about, 4 scientists, and a lot of people were like, well, actually, Winston wasn't a scientist, and then the real Ghostbuster fans started jumping up and saying, well, actually, he got his doctorate in the comic, which is considered canon. It's just like,
There you
so,
go.
Well, actuallys.
yeah. So it's nice reading something that it is a comic book, but it's also it ties in really strongly with the with the central canon of the story or whatever. So, but I really enjoyed that. So if you get a chance to check out any of the Ghostbuster comics, definitely go do that. There's a new series coming out in March, which I haven't heard anything else about. There may be an event Lainey and I will be going to in Austin. We'll see about that. That actually is a crossover between the original crew and the ladies from the new movie. So I'm looking forward to that. So,
Are those so Eugene, would those comic books be appropriate for an 11-year-old?
Yeah, nothing on it is too rough. Like
Okay.
there's no, I don't remember there being any foul language. There's
Okay.
definitely not any, like, they hint at some somewhat, like I say adult, like more sexual type things, but there's nothing like really heavy like that. Most of the time it's just, oh, hey, there's a new big bad and they have to figure out, what they need to do to defeat the big bad. And you might want to just kind of like skim through them first before you hand them over. But yeah, I would think they would be great for an 11-year-old.
Okay.
So, anyone else reading anything?
I want to read. Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, I was just gonna say I listen to because I do Audible as well once in a while. Aziz Ansari's Modern Romance book, and it was actually
so good.
It's hilarious, and it was like really informative and interesting. So I didn't expect it to be as like academic as it was, but he's a great narrator and hilarious, and I liked it a lot. So I listened to that, and then I'm also reading The Lady in the Tower, the basically talking about Anne Boleyn's Fall by Alison Weir, because I'm unhealthily obsessed with the Tudors. So
Dude, the Wives of Henry VIII, though, that's like a never-ending subject. It's the deeper you go, the better it gets.
I've been addicted to that family for years. It's like a soap opera. I can't stop, even though
Really,
it's so
truly.
terrible.
Did you hear about the PBS special they're doing?
No.
They're going to do a PBS special on the Wives of Henry VIII.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll have to watch that. But yeah, that's what I've been up to since we last met.
What were you going to say, Chris?
Oh no, I'm gonna start reading Ready Player One because I've read our next book selection, but I can't read the Star Wars book anymore.
Really, you didn't like it?
No, it was really boring.
I loved it.
Oh, I loved it.
It does get kind of dry some places.
It's very dry. They picked the. I understand why it's important to the whole story, and I get that, but I don't think my attention is right where it needs to be for that kind of book.
Did you read it or listen to it?
I'm reading it. I'm halfway through.
I will say, listen to it. I had to listen to it just because I didn't have time to like really sit down and read it. And the sound production on it alone makes it worth it.
Yes, it is. They have music. They have sound effects in the background.
Oh, that's cool.
There's voices. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm starting to think we need to get on that because I've never listened to a book on tape, so I'm starting to think of this.
Surely they have the same deals in Canada like they do here, but Audible generally will do a thing like if you sign up, you get like a book or two for free, and then like even if you quit, like you still get to keep the book, and that's how they got me started. Like I literally was like, oh, I was going to go meet Steve Wozniak, and I was like, I'm not gonna have time to read his book, so I'll just use my free credit and download his book and listen to his book, so I would be ready to go meet him. And then like a month or so later, I was like, that was kind of interesting. I wonder what else they have on there, and then I've been a member since.
Okay.
It's great for long trips too. Like I listen when I'm in the car for hours, and the time goes by.
That's how I drove to Florida. I downloaded 3 different books, and that's what I listened to the whole way there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
What are you reading, Lainey?
I was reading this, and then I started rereading a book that I've actually read before, but for some reason, I still don't remember if I read something in the news about it or something. But I'm try really hard not to judge me. I really enjoy what was I going to say? Memoirs from like celebrities and stuff that I like. Okay. And for some reason, I decided I needed to reread Holly Madison of Girls Next Door, Hugh Hefner Girlfriend fame.
I'm judging you, Lainey.
You should be judging me. I'm the worst. Yeah, so I decided to reread it. And it's funny because I remember watching that show when it was on, and listening to the book paints it in a totally different light. Like, I don't know. I listened to it before, and I'm listening to it again now. And when I like read it, like, I don't know, I can't decide how I feel about the whole thing, because she spends so much of the book kind of playing up the like whole like, oh, well, you know, I wasn't really like that, but other people around me were. It's like, okay, like, I really like Holly Madison, but I'm like, girl, like, chill out. We get it. You know,
just own it.
You were doing what you were doing to try to get what you needed. Like, I get it. Like, just let's all be realistic about it.
Have you listened to or read Tina Fey's Bossy Pants?
I love Bossy Pants. I have read Bossy Pants quite a few times.
It's on my to-do list. It's really in my to-do list.
Really good.
Yeah. It wasn't what I expected though, but it was good. Yeah. I loved when she talked about how she grew up in her family. Like that's where I was like snort laughing. Ray's like, what are you reading? I'm like, I just can't. You have to read it.
I love that. Damn, that's Don Lemon. I love it. She's so funny.
Well, our next book that we'll be reading will be Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter by Seth Graham-Smith. There is a movie version of it. We will discuss that whenever we do the book discussion. I will say this, though. If you have not read the book and you have not seen the movie, read the book.
Yes.
I haven't either.
The book.
Don't watch the movie. Just read the book.
Just read the book. You will enjoy the book. I cannot say so much about the movie. Yeah. Anyway, so that was our next book. So hopefully you will join us for our next episode. Like I said, we'll be reconvening either at the end of this month or the beginning of next month to do our next recording, and the next episode will be out shortly after the next month, the beginning of next month. So with that said, where can we find you? Oh no, before I go into that, if you haven't already, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Music. You can find us on any one of those places. You can also go to find the show on YouTube as well at Epically Geeky. Subscribe. That would greatly help us out. We're trying to get our subscription numbers up. But seriously, if you have not written a review on iTunes yet, please do that. It helps get us higher in their algorithm. More people will be able to find the show that way. So if you would, that would greatly, greatly help us out. Now, where can we find you on the internet, Lainey?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at It's a Lainey Bird, and then you can also find me on the Epically Geeky Show, as well as on our newest addition to the podcast, Epic Rhythm and Brews. In fact, our 3rd episode just dropped, so go check it out.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I thought y'all were talking about
I know.
When y'all said covers, at first I thought, okay, covers of songs. And then for some reason, I thought y'all were talking about,
album covers?
Album covers. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting topic too. And then it was like, oh, no, I was right the first time.
Hey, man, it's cool because you kind of gave me an idea for another show, so it's fine.
Well, there you go. Jennifer, where can we find you online?
Instagram and Twitter at Het's Gonna Be Me.
Love it. Chris, where can we find you online?
On Instagram at Late Life Mama.
And you can follow my wacky adventure online at Optimus Gene on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next week.